Arsenal were a club lost in transition, sitting mid-table, their identity shattered, their dressing room divided. Unai Emery had just been sacked.
Arsenal have sacked Unai Emery as of this morning.
Unai Emery has been sacked as Arsenal head coach.
The fans were restless.
It's the third game of the season, and I want it to finish already. This is not the first time we've come to a big club and got absolutely humiliated.
The players uncertain, and into that storm walked a 37-year-old Mikel Arteta, not as a legend returning home, but as a gamble. He'd never managed a senior team before. Many called him a rookie, Pep Guardiola's shadow, a risk too big for a club too fragile.
I love Pep. I admire him since he was 10 years old. I respect him profoundly. I'm so grateful for everything that did for me and continues to do with me, and I consider him a friend.
Yet from that broken dressing room, he began to rebuild not just a team, but a philosophy.
Losing, guys. I accept losing. I don't accept these fucking standards. I'm telling you, I don't accept them. I don't accept them, these standards. He's nowhere near. Nowhere near!
From the cautious counterattacks of his early seasons, to the high-pressing positional play that would later define Arsenal's identity, Arteta's journey became one of reinvention, in of both himself and the club. And now, 5 seasons later, the project feels complete. Arsenal are no longer chasing their past, they're living their future. This is the story of how a young manager transformed doubt into dominance. This is the tactical evolution of Mikel Arteta. December 20th, 2019. Arsenal were lost, confused on the pitch, divided off it, and leaking goals like a broken dam. That afternoon, Mikel Arteta walked back through the doors of the club he once captained, not as a hero, but as a man on a mission. He spoke quietly, but with conviction. The message was simple: responsibility, passion, and energy would be non-negotiable.
Well, I think we are in a difficult moment in terms of results and in terms of what's happening around the environment. Obviously, I need time to start sniffing around the reasons why. I have an idea, a clear idea about what's happening.
Anyone who couldn't live by that wouldn't survive under him. Within days, he assembled his team: Albert Stuvenberg, Steve Round, and goalkeeping coach Iñaki Kenya. The foundation of his project wasn't tactics, it was people. His first game came on Boxing Day against Bournemouth. It ended 1-1, but for the first time in months, Arsenal looked alive, compact, organized, fighting for every second ball. A week later came his first victory, a 2-0 win over Manchester United at the Emirates. It wasn't just 3 points, it was a statement that discipline could bring belief. But just as things began to take shape, the world changed. The COVID-19 pandemic brought football to a standstill. Training grounds closed, stadiums emptied, and uncertainty filled the air. For 3 months, Arteta used that silence. While others waited, he studied.
Normal virus for me. I had 3 or 4 a little bit difficult days, a little bit of temperature, some dry cough, and some discomfort in my pain, in my chest, and that was it. And yeah, the difficulty is I have people at home. I have 3 kids as well, and I was worried. I feel proud for where I am now, because in difficult moments is when do you really see the people, how they react, how they think, how they prioritize things.
When football returned, Arsenal returned with a new identity: calmer, more structured, more pragmatic. He switched from a 4-2-3-1 to a back 3, a shape that offered protection for a fragile defense built around Mustafi, Socrates, and Kolasinac. The 3-4-3 became his safety net. Arsenal no longer chased games. They controlled spaces. They invited pressure in harmless zones, blocked the middle, and struck fast on the break. With Aubameyang tucked inside on the left and Tierney driving forward, Arsenal became sharp and dangerous in transition. Under this new system, they cut their goals conceded per match from 1.1 to just 0.8. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. Then came the defining moments. In July, Arsenal faced Manchester City in the FA Cup semi-final, master versus apprentice. The plan was perfect: deep block, patient structure, lightning counters. 2 goals from Aubameyang and a clean sheet sent Arsenal to the final. At Wembley, they met Chelsea. Pulisic struck first, but Arsenal didn't panic. Aubameyang equalized from the spot, then danced through blue shirts to score a second. The kind of finish that would live forever. Arsenal lifted their 14th FA Cup, and Mikel Arteta became the first person in the club's history to win it as both captain and manager. But that cup meant more than a trophy. It symbolized control after chaos. Arsenal finished 8th in the league, but they had something far more important: direction. The culture was changing, the mood was shifting, and belief had quietly returned to North London. Arteta's first chapter wasn't about perfection, it was about survival. He walked into a storm, built a wall around the fire, and gave Arsenal a reason to believe again. The foundations were set, discipline first, beauty later. The new season began not with promises, but with patience. Mikel Arteta had calmed the chaos, but now came the real test. Evolution. He wanted Arsenal to play with control, to dominate through structure, and to carry the ball like a team that trusted its rhythm again. But his squad was still uneven. The defense had balance, yet creativity was missing. To move forward, he needed to rebuild the connection between defense and attack, and that meant reshaping everything. Off the pitch, changes were already happening. Assistant coach Freddie Ljungberg departed, as did goalkeeping coach Saliba. In their place came Carlos Cuesta, Miguel Molina, and set-piece coach Andreas Georgsson, young, detailed minds from Europe's new generation of tactical thinkers. Arteta wasn't just changing players, he was rebuilding the entire football brain of Arsenal. On August 29th, Arsenal faced Liverpool in the Community Shield, and won it on penalties thanks to some new youth introduction, a second trophy in 8 months. For Arteta, it was a small but powerful signal that structure breeds success, and days later, his title was officially upgraded. No longer just head coach, but manager of Arsenal Football Club. It was a statement of trust from the board. This was now his project. On the pitch, Arteta began phasing out the back three that had won him the FA Cup. In its place came a flexible 4-2-3-1 built around control and stability. Thomas Partey arrived from Atletico Madrid, powerful, intelligent, and calm under pressure. The kind of player Arteta could anchor a system on, but progress was never going to be linear. By winter, things were falling apart. Arsenal's buildup was neat, but slow. Possession lacked penetration, Willian's spark faded, Aubameyang's goals dried up, and the team went 10 games with just 1 win. In late December, they sat 15th in the table, 4 points above the relegation zone. The Emirates felt heavy again. The pressure was suffocating, but Arteta refused to panic. On Boxing Day 2020 against Chelsea, he gambled everything. Out went experience. In came youth. Emile Smith-Rowe, Bukayo Saka, and Gabriel Martinelli. 3 academy products, all 20 or younger, tasked with saving Arsenal's season. What followed was electric. Saka's fearlessness, Smith-Rowe's movement, and Martinelli's aggression tore Chelsea apart. Arsenal won 3-1, and for the first time in months, the Emirates smiled. That night changed everything. Arsenal had rediscovered themselves, not through money, but through trust. The young guns injected pace, personality, and belief. Between January and May, Arsenal picked up 47 points, the 3rd best record in the league during that stretch. The transformation wasn't only on the field. Inside the dressing room, Arteta was rewriting the culture. "We don't allow big egos," Mohamed El Neni later said. Everyone looked at themselves because Mikel did that to the captain of the team. And when Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang was dropped for disciplinary reasons, it sent the clearest message yet. No one was above the standard. By spring, Arsenal were playing their best football in years. The partnership of Saka and Partey gave them control. Ødegaard, on loan from Real Madrid, brought creativity and calm. On March 14th, Arteta celebrated his first North London derby win as a manager. A 2-1 victory over Tottenham, Arsenal's first since 2018. The belief was building again, but there were setbacks. Arsenal were knocked out of the FA Cup by Southampton, and later fell to Villarreal in the Europa League semi-finals. Beaten by their former manager Unai Emery, the defeat hurt, and when the season ended, Arsenal were 8th once more, and for the first time in 25 years outside of Europe. Yet beneath the disappointment, there was quiet progress. Arteta called it the foundation year. A season that taught Arsenal who they were, what they valued, what they lacked, and what they were becoming. It was the season that forced the club to look inward and rebuild from within. That summer, another shift came. Set-piece coach Andreas Georgsson left, replaced by Nicolas Jover from Manchester City. Another piece in Arteta's meticulous plan. Arsenal were becoming more structured, more dangerous, more organized in every department. The second season was the year Mikel Arteta stopped firefighting and started building. It was the year a broken squad began to trust the process. Through humiliation, hard lessons, and the courage of youth, Arsenal discovered a new identity, one defined not by fear, but by faith. The pain of December became the platform for everything that would follow. The young guns had reignited the flame, and the blueprint was finally beginning to take shape. A new season, a fresh start, or so it seemed. After 2 years of rebuilding, Mikel Arteta's Arsenal finally stepped into the light of a full stadium again. Expectations were high, but reality came swinging fast. On August 13th, 2021, newly promoted Brentford welcomed Arsenal back to the Premier League and humbled them 2-0 under the Friday night lights. Defeats to Chelsea and Manchester City followed. 3 games, 0 points, 0 goals. Arsenal sat bottom of the table for the first time in 118 years. The pressure was brutal. Fans called for Arteta's sacking. The media questioned his every decision, but deep down, the Spaniard wasn't panicking. He believed his plan was long-term, not a sprint. Behind the scenes, the work continued. That summer, Arsenal had signed 6 players, all aged 23 or under. Aaron Ramsdale, Ben White, Takehiro Tomiyasu, Nuno Tavares, Albert Sambi Lokonga, and Martin Odegaard on a permanent deal. The message was clear. Arsenal weren't buying stars, they were building them. Arteta didn't flinch. He reminded his players what they stood for: discipline, bravery, and trust in the system. And then, slowly, it began to click. In September, Arsenal found their rhythm again, winning all their league matches that month, including a 3-1 win over Tottenham in the North London derby. The Emirates came alive, and Arteta was named Premier League Manager of the Month, his first. The smiles were back. Arsenal won 10 of their next 13 matches, playing football full of rhythm, aggression, and flair. They pressed high, built patiently, and countered with precision. Ramsdale became the vocal heartbeat at the back. Odegaard dictated play with calm authority. Saka and Martinelli ripped defenses apart from the wings. For the first time since Arsene Wenger's prime, Arsenal were not just competing, they were entertaining. But progress rarely travels in straight lines. Injuries to Kieran Tierney, Takehiro Tomiyasu, and Thomas Partey arrived at the worst possible time. In April, Arsenal lost back-to-back games to Crystal Palace, Brighton, and Southampton, a gut punch that threatened everything they had built. Then, when it mattered most, the team found courage again. A 4-2 win over Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, followed by victories over Manchester United, West Ham, and Leeds, pushed them back into the race for top 4. Eddie Nketiah, once a forgotten man, became the unlikely hero, scoring crucial goals that brought Arsenal within touching distance of the Champions League. But with 3 games left, disaster struck again. A 3-0 loss to Tottenham in the North London derby, followed by a 2-0 defeat at Newcastle, crushed their hopes. Arsenal finished 5th, narrowly missing out on a return to Europe's top table. For some, it was heartbreak, but for those who watched closely, it was transformation. Arsenal ended the season with identity, unity, and purpose. If we do well in the next transfer window, he said, the following season will be even better. He was right. The plan was in motion. In May 2022, after steadying the ship and restoring faith, Mikel Arteta signed a new contract, committing to Arsenal until 2025. The rebuild was no longer a promise. It was happening. The 3rd season became the turning point, the moment the culture war ended and a new Arsenal was born. Through discipline, youth, and belief, Mikel Arteta turned a fractured club into a united force again. The Champions League had slipped away, but something far greater was forming. A team with heart, hunger, and a future. The pain of 5th place wasn't the end. It was the final test before the breakthrough.
No.
It's all over social media. I don't know what your relationship is with social media.
Not allowed.
Everywhere you see it, whether they're fans of Arsenal or not, they're just loving what is being termed Arteta-able.
After 2 years of rebuilding, Mikel Arteta entered the 2022-23 season with something different: belief. Arsenal were no longer just improving, they were ready to compete. The message was clear: no more excuses, no more rebuilding. The summer business was decisive. From Manchester City came Gabriel Jesus and Oleksandr Zinchenko, 2 players Arteta knew intimately from his time as Guardiola's assistant. Both were versatile, both winners, and both perfectly suited to Arsenal's new tactical vision. And returning returning from loan was William Saliba, tall, calm, elegant, the missing piece of a defense finally ready to hold its line. August 5th, 2022, Selhurst Park. Arsenal kicked off the Premier League season under the floodlights against Crystal Palace, and they looked transformed. High press, sharp transitions, composure in possession, a 2-0 win, Arteta's 50th league victory as Arsenal boss, making him the second fastest manager in club history to reach that milestone behind only Arsene Wenger. From there, the momentum grew. On August 20th, Arsenal beat Bournemouth 3-0 to go top of the Premier League for the first time since 2016. A week later, a 2-1 win over Fulham marked Arteta's 100th Premier League game in charge. The energy was electric. 5 straight wins to start the season, a feat Arsenal hadn't achieved since 2004. Arteta joined a list of only 11 managers ever to open a Premier League campaign with 5 consecutive victories. In August, Arteta was named Premier League Manager of the Month, his 3rd time claiming the award. Arsenal weren't just winning, they were convincing. On October 16th, a 1-0 victory over Leeds United confirmed their best ever start to a top-flight season, 9 wins in 10 games. 1 month later, a gritty 1-0 triumph at Stamford Bridge over Chelsea. Arteta's 87th win in 150 games made him the most successful Arsenal manager across that span, surpassing both George Graham and Arsene Wenger. Tactically, Arsenal had become one of Europe's most fascinating sides. Arteta's 4-3-3 morphed into a 3-2-5 in possession. Zinchenko stepped into midfield beside Thomas Partey, giving Arsenal numerical control in build-up. Xhaka pushed higher, Odegaard floated between the lines, and the wingers, Saka and Martinelli, attacked with blistering width. Every pass, every press, every rotation was deliberate. It wasn't chaos anymore, it was choreography. By January, Arsenal were 5 points clear at the top, their best halfway record in Premier League history. The football was fast, fearless, and clinical. Jesus' pressing triggered everything. Odegaard's intelligence turned possession into poetry. And the Emirates, it had become alive again, singing, believing, and dreaming. Then came adversity. A knee injury to Gabriel Jesus during the World Cup threatened to derail their run, but Arteta's philosophy of trust and structure carried them through. Eddie Nketiah stepped up, scoring crucial goals against West Ham and Manchester United. Arsenal stayed top. March brought setbacks. Eliminated from the Europa League by Sporting CP on penalties, and injuries to Saliba and Tomiyasu weakened their backline. Without their defensive core, Arsenal began to leak control. A string of draws, Liverpool, West Ham, Southampton, slowed momentum. Then came the night at the Etihad, Manchester City versus Arsenal, champions against challengers. Guardiola's men were ruthless, their precision machine-like, a 4-1 defeat that shifted the balance. Arsenal had run hard, but the final sprint belonged to City. The dream faded, but the journey became legend. Arsenal finished second, their highest position since 2016, with 84 points and the youngest squad in the league. Their style of play had redefined what modern Arsenal football looked like: controlled, collective, courageous. 4 Manager of the Month awards, Champions League qualification secured, and belief restored. The season had ended in heartbreak, but it had reignited the soul of the club. The sleeping giant was fully awake. Arsenal were no longer rebuilding, they were contenders. After the heartbreak of 2023, Arsenal entered the 2023/24 season with a quiet fire. They had gone toe-to-toe with Manchester City and fallen just short, but that pain had matured them. This wasn't about proving themselves anymore. This was about finishing the job. The summer of 2023 was the moment Arsenal signaled they were serious. Declan Rice arrived from West Ham for a club record £105 million, a leader, a warrior, and a controller all in one. Kai Havertz joined from Chelsea to add fluidity in midfield, and goalkeeper David Raya arrived from Brentford to push Aaron Ramsdale for the #1 shirt. Arteta was no longer just building a team, he was refining a machine. The season began where the last one had ended, against Manchester City at Wembley, the FA Community Shield. After a tense 1-1 draw, Arsenal held their nerve in the shootout and won 4-1 on penalties. Arteta lifted his 3rd trophy as Arsenal manager, a symbolic victory over his old mentor and the perfect start to the season. In the league, Arsenal's start was strong and structured. Rice instantly settled into the midfield, his calmness transforming the team's transitions. Havertz began slowly, but his intelligence off the ball soon started to to show. The backline, anchored by Saliba, Gabriel, and the ever-reliable Ben White, looked immovable. Arsenal were playing with control, confidence, and conviction. Then came the night that broke a curse. October 8th, 2023, the Emirates Stadium under the lights. Arsenal versus Manchester City, a fixture they hadn't won in 12 Premier League attempts. The match was tense, tactical, and tight, but in the 86th minute, Martinelli's deflected shot sent the crowd into chaos. Arsenal won 1-0, ending that 12-game losing streak against City and proving once and for all that they belonged at the top table again. Momentum grew. On November 25th, Arteta managed his 200th game in charge. A 1-0 away win at Brentford that sent Arsenal back to the top of the Premier League for the first time that season. Just 4 days later, on November 29th, Arsenal demolished Lens 6-0 at the Emirates to qualify for the Champions League knockout stages for the first time since 2016-17. And they did it in style, finishing top of Group B. Arteta's tactical blueprint was now mature and flexible. Arsenal alternated seamlessly between a 4-3-3 and a 3-2-5. Rice controlled the midfield next to Jorginho or Partey. Odegaard orchestrated play like a conductor, while the wide wingers, Saka and Martinelli, stretched the pitch with terrifying pace. Ben White inverted to form triangles in build-up, and the defensive unit led by Saliba had become the best in England. February brought dominance. 4 games, 4 wins, 18 goals scored, and just 2 conceded. Arsenal didn't just win, they dismantled teams. For that perfect month, Arteta was named Premier League Manager of the Month, recognizing a side that was ruthless, resilient, and relentless. In Europe, the story continued. In the Champions League round of 16, Arsenal faced Porto, a bruising tactical duel that went to penalties. Arteta's men held their nerve, winning the shootout and advancing to the quarterfinals for the first time since 2009-10. The Emirates, once silent on European nights, was now roaring with belief again. As spring arrived, Arsenal were neck and neck with Manchester City. Every match mattered, every mistake was magnified. On May 12th, Arsenal defeated Manchester United 1-0 at Old Trafford, their 27th league win of the season, the most ever achieved by the club in a 38-game campaign, surpassing even the Invincibles of 2003-04. But football can be cruel. On the final day, Arsenal beat Everton 2-1 at the Emirates, a fitting close to a near-perfect season. Yet elsewhere, City won again. Arsenal finished runners-up for the second year in a row, just 2 points short of the title. It wasn't failure, it was proof. Arsenal had become a complete side, tactically disciplined, emotionally mature, and mentally fearless. They'd pushed Manchester City further than anyone else in Europe. And in September 2024, Mikel Arteta extended his contract for 3 more years, a declaration that the journey wasn't over. Arsenal weren't rebuilding anymore. They were refining, chasing perfection, and writing a new era. They didn't lift the trophy, but they lifted a belief that had once been lost. The Arteta revolution was complete in spirit, but in his mind, the mission had only just begun. For some seasons, the scoreboard tells one story, but the truth lies in the margin between hope and heartbreak. In 2024/25, under Mikel Arteta, Arsenal produced a season of structure, dominance, and statement moments. Yet despite the brilliance, the trophy cabinet remained empty. This was the campaign where Arsenal proved they could be contenders, and the one where the fine margins proved cruel. Let's begin with Europe, because that's where Arsenal finally stopped chasing and began threatening. In the knockout stages of the 2024-25 UEFA Champions League, Arsenal drew the Monster Club, Real Madrid, 15-time European champions, kings of the competition. Arsenal didn't just beat them, they battered them. On April 8th at the Emirates, Arsenal dismantled Real Madrid 3-0, goals from Declan Rice, 2 stunning free kicks, and Mikel Merino sealed a spectacle of control. A week later, at the Bernabeu, Arsenal made the decisive statement, 2-1 win for a 5-1 aggregate demolition of the European giants. Suddenly, Arsenal weren't just back in Europe, they were favorites to go all the way. Recognized by many as one of the credible challengers for the title, this performance rewrote how the club was viewed on the continent. The margin for error had shrunk to almost nothing. Defensively, the machine was as good as it's been in years. Arsenal conceded the fewest goals in the league and kept the most clean sheets. Offensively, the issue wasn't effort, it was missing missing that extra spark to convert dominance into silverware. Attackers scored, created, but nobody passed the league's top 10 scorers. That shallow depth in the front line was the one vulnerability in an otherwise mature setup. Tactically, Arteta refined the blueprint again, a hybrid between the 4-3-3 and the 3-2-5, with Rice as the defensive metronome. Saliba and Gabriel finally fulfilled their promise as a world-class center-back duo, and Odegaard captained the tempo. Against Real Madrid, he orchestrated the press, he ran the lines, he demanded precision. Arsenal pressed high, forbade transitions, controlled the build-up, and used width and pace to punish mistakes. The quarterfinals weren't luck, they were the result of structure, preparation, and application. Off the field, the narrative was building too. The club signed Rice not just to improve midfield, but to lead. The squad depth improved, the youth continued to break through, and culture stood firm. But culture alone doesn't win titles. And as the season closed, Arsenal were left with a collection of near victories. With the Champions League run, the league performance, and Arsenal being publicly pointed at as one of the favorites to win Europe's biggest prize, the expectation had never been higher. Yet by season's end, consensus remained. They were so close, but still not quite there. The unfinished symphony had reached its crescendo. It's starting to feel different. After years of building, heartbreak, and fine margins, this finally looks like the season. Arsenal are no longer chasing the elite, they are the elite. The patterns are crisp, the squad is deep, and for the first time under Mikel Arteta, there's no obvious weakness. The summer of 2025 was the busiest of the Arteta era, a total rebuild in detail, not direction. The clearouts were ruthless. Tierney, Jorginho, Tavares, and Tomiyasu all departed, making room for a new generation. In came experience, precision, and profile. Kepa Arrizabalaga, signed from Chelsea, brought Champions League pedigree and calm distribution. Martin Zubimendi, Arteta's longtime target from Real Sociedad, arrived to anchor midfield, the natural heir to Xhaka's discipline, but with Spanish control and press resistance. Christian Nørgaard, Brentford's captain, came in as reliable depth and leadership for the domestic grind. Noni Madueke, 23, added raw speed and 1v1 threat from the right, a player Arteta called one of the most talented wide forwards in England. Christian Mosquera, 21, the composed young center back from Valencia, was signed for the future but has already stepped up with Saliba sidelined. Victor Gyökeres, the marquee signing from Sporting Lisbon, a machine of goals, power, and presence, instantly transformed Arsenal's front line. 97 goals in 102 games before arriving, and he started in red-hot form. Eberechi Eze, a homecoming story, returned to North London from Crystal Palace to offer flair, creativity, and set-piece magic. And finally, Piero Hincapié, on loan from Bayer Leverkusen, the left-sided defender from Leverkusen's invincible season, gave Arsenal perfect defensive symmetry. It was a statement of intent, depth, maturity, balance. Every hole filled, every plan accounted for. The results followed. Opening day at Old Trafford, Arsenal won 1-0, Calafiori scoring from a Rice corner. Then came the 5-0 demolition of Leeds United, Timber with a brace, Gyökeres with 2, and 15-year-old Max Dowman debuting and winning a stoppage time penalty. It felt like a celebration of everything Arteta has built: youth, detail, dominance. A narrow defeat at Anfield reminded everyone how thin the margins remain, but even that night, pundits noted, this is a side that knows exactly who it is. By late October, Arsenal were unbeaten in 10 of their last 11 matches, top of the Premier League, and 9 points from 9 in the Champions League phase. 2-0 at Athletic Bilbao, 2-0 versus Olympiacos, and a breathtaking 4-0 destruction of Atletico Madrid at the Emirates, led by a Gyökeres brace and Eze's orchestration. The stats tell the story of control. Fewest goals conceded in England. Highest XG differential in the league. Every goal from set pieces rehearsed and repeated like clockwork. 15 players called up to their national teams. Proof of how far the squad has evolved. The football is sharper. Rice dictates tempo like a general. Zubimendi and Marino rotate seamlessly. Saka and Martinelli run narrower to feed Gyökeres' hold-up play. Eze floats into half spaces with swagger. Even without Odegaard injured for weeks, the rhythm never broke. That's what champions look like. Arteta calls this the maturation season. You can see why. They've built for this moment, not just to compete, but to finish. The story is unfinished. The symphony remains to be completed, but the notes have never sounded clearer. And when the final chord comes, the world will hear them.